Hi, friends. So welcome. We are looking at management representation in this section. You'll find it under chapter 24 of the core text, quite a short, very, very short chapter. Okay. It's just about maximum 3 pages. Sorry, 3 leaves, 6 pages. Okay. About 6 pages. Okay. And now we just want to look at management representation as we wrap up. You may have heard so far when we talk of management providing auditors with all the necessary evidence, okay, and then they make assertions on concerning anything that is going on in course of the operations. So they normally must do this in a written form, okay. So that's what we normally term as management representation, and there's a whole ISA which covers it, okay. So we'll be looking at management representation, and like I said, a whole ISA 580 covers management representation. We'll go straight as I share the screen, and then we can wrap up on this as well. Okay. So management representation. Management representation. So we want to understand the purpose of a letter of representation, okay? And then we'll also look at audit evidence. Okay, management representation is what we're dealing with. So it is a form of audit evidence. Okay, the letter of representation from management is a form of audit evidence we can tender in, but it has its limitations. Predominantly, we don't just rely on what they have said. We need to work our own way using our methods and procedures. We'll also look at the content of such a letter and the requirements needed for its approval by the directors. It's usually signed by the management, okay, and then they give it over to they hand it over to the auditors. Again, we'll consider the steps the auditor should take if directors refuse to provide them with such written representations, okay. So ISA 580 tells us that, yes, the written representations is an audit evidence, but in and of themselves, they do not serve as sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So if the management representation is telling you that we have disclosed all matters relating to related party transactions, we've recorded them in accordance with the relevant laws. We've recorded all related party transactions in line with relevant laws and regulations and standards. It's an audit evidence, yes, but it doesn't provide us with enough justification that related party transactions have been recorded in line with the standards applicable. So what we have to do is that we test what they have said, okay? So the fact that management has provided a reliable written evidence, written representation, it does not affect the nature and the extent and even the timing of our work, of any other audit evidence we need to vouch in order to be sure that what management has said is true, their responsibilities have been discharged accordingly, and any specific assertions they've made are correct. We have to conduct our work, our audit, okay? So usually letters of representations are written form, okay? Normally, auditors have a template. That's what I have seen, interestingly. So auditors, because they've worked with many companies and clients, they have a standardized template, which they will normally give to the client, and the client will fine-tune it to meet their operations or their situations. But at the end of the day, the fact that the auditor has even given you a sample, a template, it doesn't mean that the auditor is giving you words to say. You own the letter. It is yours. It will be on your letterhead. So you, the company management, the directors of the company, you will be held accountable for any lapses that pop up, okay? So it is written, like we said, written by those charged in governance, directors, management, and given to the auditors. But in reality, the auditors normally have a template they share with them, okay? It shouldn't be the case, but that's what happens in real life. It also confirms statements which the directors have made during the audit, any assertions they've made, any key aspects of an account they have stated this letter represent. It can be very comprehensive. It can be short, depending on the size and nature of operations of the company, okay? I'll give you a typical example. If you look at page 383 to 384, you will see an example of a management representation letter, Weibo PLC, and then it was given to Mrs. John Foolish. All right, so you find it that's an example there. Okay, so it should contain this is what it should contain, basically, principally. And if you look at example in the book, you'll find similar situations there. So all relevant information provided to the auditor by management, it should include that. All transactions which have been recorded and reflected in the financial statement, it should include that, okay? So you really typically find financial statements, what should be included there as a caption, as a subheading. You'll find they will tell you that we have provided you with access to all relevant information that you need insofar as the preparation of our financial statements are concerned. We've given you additional information that you have requested for the purpose of the audit, okay? Unrestricted access to persons within the entity, so on and so forth, okay? And then they would also mention specific matters which you might need to know. Maybe there's a legal claim, okay? Maybe there's some issue with demolition or some restructuring of a land or restructuring of the company, any specific special issue, they will mention it there, okay? And it will also clearly tell you the management responsibilities. It tells you something about the responsibilities of those who are charged with governance of the organization. So any specific assertions, specific items that we, the auditors, need some form of assurance over, you find it in the letter of representation. And it is signed at the end of the day, signed by the Chief Executive Officer, CFO, CEO, Managing Director, and usually you find a Financial Director, CFO, Financial Controller signing, because so far as there are issues with financial statements, we need someone who has goal ownership over the financial statements to also sign, to endorse it. All right, we wrap up. So what if the company decides not to give you or present to you a written form of a letter of representation? What should we do? As an auditor, we disclaim our opinion. If management refuses to tell us, and in the form of a written representation, that it has fulfilled their responsibilities as management, we disclaim our opinion. In fact, the letter of representation should also include management assertions about fraud risk management in the company. And if there is anything of that nature, they must disclose clearly that they have no knowledge or there's been no fraud perpetrated in the company. They must disclose all of this, okay? At the end of the day, the letter of representation will serve as a form of immunity for the auditors, okay? So it's a form of immunity to us as auditors, okay? Now, again, if the directors refuse to confirm that they've cooperated with the auditors, which they would have stated in the letter of representation, then we, the auditors, can know that really these guys are not giving us the full story. They're giving us a half-baked something for us to work with. It will impede our work. There could be scope limitations, okay? So again, we can disclaim our opinion in that area. Now, if the auditors realize that from the letter of representation written, and even from our observation and understanding of how the client works and the management responsibilities, if we realize that there is a question about the competence of the management, they lack integrity, there are issues, questions about the ethical values, then what we can do as auditors, the best thing is to withdraw from the engagement. Even if you have started the work up until a certain point, you must cut off the work. Somebody will say, what if I have worked halfway and I cut off? Would they pay me? Of course. You have to prorate the fees and ask them to pay up to that certain point, because auditors work with time sheets and hours that they spend on the job. That will tell them how much they're supposed to pay. Of course, if the terms of engagement says that you cannot get paid until you finish the work, that's a different thing. The legal guys will handle that one, okay? We are not interested in that. What we are saying is, you identify anything questionable with their integrity, with their competency with the ethical values withdraw from the engagement. Okay. If you want to continue, no problem. But make sure that you have received written evidence of management representations. Accordingly, in light of the evidence you have, or in light of any evidence you could obtain from somewhere. Okay. I remember in an audit field when the management has said ABC, and we realized that they were actually opposite. We questioned them. You guys have mentioned there's no fraud, there's nothing, but this is what we are seeing. Doesn't mean what you people wrote was false, okay? And that alone can give you a terrible a dent on your report, okay? So it is a form of audit evidence, but the fact is, I'll go back one step. It is a form of audit evidence, but it is not the only one we can rely on. It's just a written representation. We must go beyond, far and beyond, and work at it, okay? We cannot just rely on it to think that, yes, management said there was no fraud, so that's enough. We don't have to verify. Management said related party transactions have been clearly reported, so we don't have to. No, you don't have to just rely on their statement. You must go and then test, okay? So we only use it on restricted number of matters, and it is advisable for us as auditors to ascertain that the persons who are responsible for this letter of representation must fully understand the content of what they've written, okay? And when we ask them to confirm what they have stated, they must be in a position to confirm it. No two ways about that. You don't just write something you don't understand. And even if the auditors have given you a template, a sample, we don't normally say it's a template, we say a sample for them to use, a generic one for them to tweak to meet their circumstances. You don't tell me that, well, the auditors gave it to me and I don't understand. If you don't understand, you don't use it. It is yours as a company, and you must own it up. You will sign it. Auditors don't sign it, okay? Some beautiful case study on page 386. Just one case study, very short, beautiful case study. I love that case study, okay? Very short one. Try it, okay? And of course, we will always populate the student self-testing questions on the VLE as guiding questions when you are reading or going through the entire study, all right? This time around, I think the student self-testing questions are just 3, okay? Now, you should now attempt the examination question. They're quite detailed. I love that question, very detailed, but it is quite practical. All right, I'll end here, friends. Like I said, quite a short topic, and we leave it here. No further comments. I'll see you when I see you. Bye for now.